Why did the British invade the Aborigines in Australia and not the other way around? Was it because the British were smarter? Or maybe the Aborigines were simply kinder, peaceful societies? The truth is, it's not as simple as that.
It's not that simple.
To understand why, we need to go back, way back. Around 12,000 years ago, humans found themselves at a tipping point. In some parts of the world, people were starving. So, out of necessity, they did something revolutionary. They began harvesting the earth. Unlike fruit or meat that spoils, grains can be stored. This led to one of the biggest leaps in human history: surplus. For the first time in history, humans produced more than they needed. The surplus in those communities gave birth to marvels that changed humanity forever. Writing, death, money, bureaucracy, armies, clergy, technology, and even the first biochemical wars. We know from archaeologists that the first forms of writing began in Mesopotamia, where Iraq and Syria are today. As societies began harvesting the earth, farmers had to store their grains in shared granaries. But such a system needed a way to keep track of who owned what. So, the first forms of writing were created for accounting purposes, to track the grains stored in these granaries. It is no surprise then that in societies where agriculture wasn't necessary, where there was no shortage of food from hunting or gathering, writing never developed. Instead, these societies, like in Australia or South America, focused on music, painting, and culture. The creation of these receipts didn't just mark the beginning of writing. Workers in farms were compensated with shells engraved with numbers representing the amount of grain they were owed. And since these grains were not yet harvested, this was the birth of both money and debt. But for this system to work, people had to trust it. Mr. Nabuk, who was owed 10 pounds of grain, had to believe that the controller of the granary would give him his debt by using his IOU shell. This is the origin of the word credit, which comes from the Latin word credere, which means to believe. For such faith to prevail, some higher power, some almighty king or state must exist to make the currency of the economy trustworthy. A state could have never been created without the existence of a surplus to service it, nor the police, public affairs, or even the armies that govern those societies. Even organized clergies were a consequence of surplus. Almost every society where surplus have existed distributed those in an enormously unequal manner. So they came up with ideologies that justified this and made people believe in their hearts that only the rulers had the right to rule. This job was done by the clergy. But agriculture also led to deadly diseases. By compiling pounds of grains on top of each other, many new bacteria were created to which the human body was not immune. At first, many died, but after generations and the help of natural selection, those communities began adapting to these new diseases. However, when they encountered other tribes, a single handshake was enough to wipe out most of the people in those communities. This was the first biochemical wars. So why did the British invade the Aborigines in Australia, not the other way around? It wasn't because of intelligence or any inherent characteristics. In places like Eurasia, the environment forced societies to innovate and develop technologies for farming, defense, and conquest. Geography, not genes, created world inequalities. And when the time came, when ships were built and the age of exploration began, the British had steel, guns, and organized armies, all products of centuries of technological advancement. Meanwhile, the Aborigines in Australia, who had no need for these developments in their environment, weren't prepared for such an invasion. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.